Hi, I'm Wes Allen, and 3 years ago, I started my journey in the world of Monte Cook Games with my reviews of Numenera and Cypher System. Since those reviews, I've run an almost 3 year campaign of Numenera, run Cypher System at several conventions, and a short lived superhero campaign. I've been connected with the folks at Cypher Unlimited and have even been able to interview some of the good folks who write these games I enjoy so much, and I have loved it. Now, with the full public release of the Cypher Character Rulebook imminent, it's also the first major system update I've lived through for a system in which I'm invested since I was like a kid from AD&D to AD&D 2nd Edition. So does this new version of the game manage to thread the needle and create a fresh take on a game I love while bringing its past incarnations forward? Well, I'll share my thoughts on it right now on DM Tales. Let's roll it. Numenera and Cypher System possess a character structure based on a sentence. I am an adjective, that's the descriptor, noun, type, which is the closest the game gets to a class, who verbs, that's the focus. It's a cool setup. But creating a character with those elements requires players to flip through several chapters in the rulebook, making sure that no bit of information got skipped as the character got built. And the process wasn't hard, it just could be exhausting. Now, MCG did create their excellent character creation tool, which sped things up a lot, but one of the goals for this edition was to streamline the process even more. So let's look at the changes that they made. The basic design for Cypher characters remains unchanged from earlier incarnations. Characters are still built off their character sentence from previous games, and there are still three pools: might, speed, and intellect. There are still points to spend, skills to pick, and special abilities to add. Now, the character creation process now begins with something new, a core character. And wow, does that work! Core characters pools each begin at 8, and players have 6 points to spend to build out their natural inclinations. They can pick 2 skills, limited by the genre in which the campaign or adventure is set. Although players may make a case for something else that they like, Cypher remains very customizable. And they may also take a third skill if they embrace an inability in a fourth. I love a game which encourages a player to embrace weaknesses during character creation, so that is a big win for me. Core characters may also take 3 minor wounds, 3 moderate wounds, and 3 major wounds. This is the biggest mechanical change to characters in the game because their pools no longer function as their health points. We'll talk about how wounds work in a bit. Now, once the core character is completed, characters will follow an excellent guide that's found on page 14 of the Character Creation Rulebook to complete the process. The first step, well, that's to pick a type. That's the character's noun. In Cypher System, there were 4 types from which a player could choose: warrior, adept, explorer, or speaker. These fit the characters into certain classic fantasy roles. Warriors were tanks, adepts wielded powers, explorers used stealth or guile, speakers were a group's face or were inspirational healers. But sometimes trying to fit these roles into a specific game felt a tad clunky. Now, Cypher, recognizing the small bit of clunk, has jettisoned the 4 basic types and replaced them with types based on genre and even subgenre. So, for Cypher, for example, a campaign is more than just generic fantasy. Instead, it's going to be dungeon fantasy, or swords and sorcery, or epic fantasy. And each subgenre has its own list of types tuned for that specific style of game. Now, can you use a type from another subgenre if you'd really like to? Yeah, sure. There's not that much difference in the builds, and the Cypher Character Rulebook offers some general advice on tweaking types to make them more compatible if a table feels it's necessary. Now, each type grants a character 4 more points, which are assigned to the pools, sometimes 1, 2, or 3. It also gives 1 point of edge, which a player can assign to the pool of their choice. And if you've never played Cypher System, edge is a cost reduction stat that gets applied when pool points are spent. It also lists a group of weapons and armor that these characters may use freely, that is, without penalty, a number of starting abilities, typically 3, 1, 2, 3, and a starting equipment bundle. Each type is presented either on one page or as part of a 2-page spread, so there's no flipping through pages to gather all of a type's information. That is well done. Cypher covers 4 genres in the character rulebook, with the aforementioned subgenres, which opened up a variety of gameplay styles. The superhero genre, however, breaks with the genre-subgenre split in favor of hero ranks. Now, that's an interesting decision, and I'm going to cover that setup in a separate video at some point because I like how they did it and what they're trying for with it. Now, once a character's type is selected, the next step, that's to choose the descriptor. I'm loving how descriptors are handled in Cypher because they're simplified and more accessible because of it. First, the presentation is now much more terse than it was in the Cypher System Rulebook. Not only is information more easy to digest, more descriptors are also able to fit on one page, so they're more glanceable. Love that. Second, each descriptor now grants the same 2 points to a pull and training in a specific skill. This removes the struggle with the old edition where certain descriptors wouldn't be chosen because they offered no bonuses to pulls, while others would be gravitated toward because they offered more than the average or offered even greater benefits in general. Now, once a character has been described and given a type, it's time to find out what they do. This leads to what I find to be the most dramatic change in Cypher's character design, the focus. Cypher's foci, yes, that's a legitimate pronunciation in American English, they achieve several cool feats in this new setup. First, they shoulder most of the bookkeeping for advancement. In previous games powered by Cypher System, new abilities emerged from both the character's type and focus. Now, that wasn't a huge issue, but it felt a bit clunky because you were always doing the page flipping thing. And in Cypher now, with two exceptions, a character's new abilities come from their focus only. This simplifies types while also making advancement bookkeeping a little bit more streamlined. I kind of like it. Second, foci help characters become a bit more differentiated as characters tier up. Each focus includes a flowchart, some are more complex than others, which shows how each focus ability is connected. In order to choose a specific ability when a character reaches a new tier, their existing abilities must connect to the higher ability during advancement. This sort of differentiation used to take place under the character's type, but to me it fits better under focus because it makes sense that a character's new abilities would emerge from the sorts of thing the character does. And focus is, after all, the verb in the character sentence. Third, and this carries over from previous editions, it's where characters' initial character customization shines. I mean, sure, you can play a cleric, but what kind of cleric? Are you the type that believes your skills with a mace best serve the order? Well, then you might be a cleric who masters weapons. Are you the type of cleric who taps into divine powers of the deity to bring justice to the downtrodden? Well, then maybe you're a cleric who rides the lightning or blazes with fire. Are you the classic cleric healbot? Well, then you're a cleric who tends to the wounded. Or what if you want to mix things up and you want to play a warrior who wants to bring healing? Well, then you'd be a fighter who tends to the wounded. Cypher characters are pretty powerful from the jump, so players can optimize to get maximum usage of their pulls if they choose to do so, but foci give players an opportunity to explore a whole bunch of different kinds of characters, and now that design of the foci is more standardized, they're more easy to navigate, so I'm really here for that. Now, once the type, descriptor, and focus are selected, the character's sentence is complete and they're ready to go. But there's one more way a character's growth can be shown on their sheet, and that's with genre abilities. Each genre has a list of abilities split between mid and high tier from which players may choose at tier 3 and tier 6. The ability a player chooses doesn't have to have anything to do with their character's story, but where's the fun in that? A weapon master, for example, may decide they need a bit of magic after a failed attempt to defeat a dark wizard, or a barbarian may have failed to avenge the death of an innocent and hardens their body even more by making themselves tough. Perhaps a dour cleric realizes their personality is off-putting and puts in the effort to play the social game, giving themselves a winning smile. See, to me, genre abilities are more than just level buffs. They can enhance the story of a campaign as characters obtain them. And that is really cool. The rule changes from Cypher system to Cypher are subtle, with the exception of the new wounds system. And they're so subtle, in fact, that I was shocked by how different it felt to run the game when I did run it. And I'll share about my experience running Cypher in a little bit. For now, let's look at the changes beginning with Cyphers themselves. Cyphers originated in Numenera, where they were effectively technology-based single-use magic items. They were meant to be used, then replenished. These sorts of ciphers work well in Numenera, and they also work in fantasy or some science fiction type games, but in more grounded campaigns, they didn't work all that well. So to combat this, Cypher System added a concept of subtle ciphers, which were like moments of extreme determination or inspiration which impacted the game world. These two, they were fine. They've been improved. Now, the default is what used to be known as the subtle cipher. There's no in-game need to explain them unless players want to do so, which I always encourage. These just happen. Most are just standard things, like granting a sudden burst of speed or opening up a window to counterattack after taking damage. Some are so-called non-standard ciphers, and these do break typical rules for duration or impact, and they're marked as such in the Cypher Rulebook. Ciphers which are physical, such as those in Numenera, are called manifest ciphers. These also unleash cool effects into a game, but are now listed with a power level from low all the way up to ultra, which indicates their relative strength. Now, interestingly, this breaks from the everything has a level concept that Cypher is based off of. Some folks who are longtime fans of the system might find that shift jarring, but I actually think it makes more sense overall because a lot of times a Cypher's level didn't make all that much sense at all. They just were there because everything has a level. This kind of shows you what power level they're at, and I applaud it. Because the GM doesn't roll dice in Cypher, they impact the world through intrusions. Anytime a GM wants to nudge the story or increase a scene's tension, they may introduce an intrusion. To do so, they give 1 XP to the player most affected by the intrusion, to the character who's gun jammed, or if their attempt to charm an NPC goes way off the rails, and then that PC gets a 2nd XP they can give to another player for any reason they want. The intrusion then alters the scene and then play continues. Now, in older Cypher System games, a player could actually refuse an intrusion by spending 2 experience points. This retconned the GM's intrusion out of existence, and the scene carried on as it had been doing before. In Cypher, however, that's no longer a thing. Instead, when a player spends 2 experience points, they respond to the intrusion. And I like this a lot, because the cool twist still happens, and the players are affected, especially the one upon whom the intrusion falls, but they get to alter that circumstance in response. If a character's gun jams, they're in deep trouble because they need to clear it before they can rejoin the fight. But a player might say they managed to shake the jam loose, and so all they lose is that 1 attack. Or, just as a VIP is about to call security on a charming character, one of their benefactors shows up and rescues them. I love this change because when a player minimizes the impact of an intrusion, it's rolled into the fiction instead of erasing it. Like it. Combat shifts very little from Cypher System to Cypher. Parties roll against the level of their opponents. Players who beat the target go before their opponents. Those who fail to do so, they go after. Combat begins, and the folks in the different initiative groups, they go in whatever order they want. Doesn't really matter. Cypher, however, adds 2 new factors into the action economy: first actions and last actions. First actions break the normal initiative order and allow a character to take that action, and that action alone, before all other actions in the combat round. Now, their movement and all other free actions they want to make, they're going to happen during their normal spot in initiative. So if a player gets the drop on someone and they have a weapon or ability which allows a first action, they get to use that action before everyone else, or along with everyone else who's using a first action, because more than one person can do so. Now, to me, this is a good way to get around the problem of rolling initiative when someone says something like, while they're talking, I punch them in the face, which always seems to happen. But then they roll initiative and the character rolls terribly and they wind up going last in the round, even though they were trying to start the fight with the punch. Combat's going to start when that punch is attempted, and things are going to get really chaotic. But that action, in that turn, that's going to happen first, and it's by rule. I like it. It's a fun tweak, and certain weapons, they have the ability to always be used as a first action. And I do have to say, it's always an option. Players do not have to attack first if they don't want to. They can reserve that for their regular action. It's just, I want to get the stab in quick. Let's go. That's really cool. Now, last actions, on the other hand, are often attached to large and heavy weapons. When an attack is made with a weapon which is marked a last action, a player may do nothing else in that round except attack. They can't move, they can't drink a potion, they can't toss something to another player. This is less appealing to me than first actions because the player gets stuck in limbo where the combat is happening all around them and they're moving in slow motion. It doesn't sound fun to me, and it feels a little bit like punishing the players who choose big weapons. Now, if the attack itself was the only thing which became a last action, I think that would be fine. But erasing every other thing a character can do in order to swing the big axe feels like too much. I mean, sure, they can still take defensive actions, but why can't they move a bit as part of their wind-up? This actually might be the only rule change I do not care for. Now, I get why it's there, but it feels like overcompensation. One thing to note about last actions, though. Using a cipher as opposed to a manifest cipher, that's not listed as an action. That is, they're not part of the action economy. So the way I read this is, if you've got a combat-oriented cipher and are taking a last action, you may activate it as part of your last action. At least that's how I'm going to play it. Now, defensive actions have also changed in the new setup. Characters may dodge, which is a speed action and functions the way that defense actions worked in Cypher system. And for folks who don't know, players roll all the dice in Cypher, so you're rolling your defense. If they manage to dodge, they take no damage at all. But characters may also now block, and a successful block reduces an incoming wound by 1 step, major to moderate, moderate to minor. Because characters take damage when blocking, though, this begs the question. Why would a character want to block instead of dodge? The answer is armor. For each level of armor, light, medium, and heavy, a character's block task is eased by 1 step. Facing off against a level 5 creature, a dodge action might be a bit daunting even with effort easing the roll by 1 step to a 4. That's a 12 to succeed. But a character wearing chainmail armor reduces that level 5 task to a level 3 task for a block. And then with a level of effort, they can reduce that to level 2, changing the target number from 12 at the lowest to 6 at the lowest. That's a little bit easier to hit. It's a pretty good trick. But there is a downside. If an armored character has to dodge an attack for some reason, because, blocking lightning is not really a good thing to try in metal armor, their dodging rolls are actually hindered by their armor level. So a character wearing chainmail suddenly needs to beat a level 7 task when dodging a level 5 creature. With Everett, that comes down to a level 6, but that's still an 18 to get out of the way. So here's my advice for GMs. If you wind up with a bunch of tanks, start throwing some mid-level adversaries at them who use attacks that can't be blocked. Not all the time, but enough for players to develop a healthy paranoia. Because wizards aren't always going to be using physical attacks. As already mentioned, wounds are the greatest mechanical shift from old Cypher system into Cypher. See, in previous versions, a PC's pools functioned as their health. So when they used those pools to do something like applying effort to a task or activating cool abilities, they were weakening themselves. Now, I always thought that was cool, but it did make players look at their pool totals and say, oh no, I can't use that ability right now. That'll hurt me. As now, character pulls and damage, they're separated, so spending points to do cool stuff, that's not as daunting anymore. As was said earlier, core characters can take 3 minor wounds, like strains or scrapes, 3 moderate wounds, which is cuts or really bad contusions, and 3 major wounds, broken bones or serious gashes. A character's type will then add a number of extra wounds that a character can suffer which fits their narrative design. A barbarian, for example, can take 3 more minor wounds and 1 more moderate wound, so if you're going to come at a barbarian, you better come hard. Wounds spill over. So when a character has taken all the wounds of a certain level, any additional wounds of that type become wounds of the next severity. Minor wounds become moderate wounds become major. Now, while minor wounds, they're not all that serious, when a character has all their moderate wounds filled, every action they take is suddenly hindered. And then every major wound a character takes hinders them again. And any character who takes 3 major wounds, regardless of any of the other wounds they have received, they're just dead. If characters go PvP, or if a GM is converting a creature from an older version of Cypher, physical damage is converted with a simple chart. 1 to 4 damage inflicts a light wound, 5 to 8 inflicts a moderate wound, and 9 or more inflicts a major wound. I did, however, say physical damage because it's still possible for adversaries through the use of poison, magic, or psychic abilities to inflict damage on a character's pools. And any successful attack against a pool that has reached 0, that's converted to wounds using the same criteria as physical attacks. Recoveries in Cypher function much as they always have. Players get 4 recoveries a day, 1 action, 10 minutes, 1 hour, and 10 hours. They may use them in any order they choose. This is a little bit different than rules as written in old Cypher system, but it's the way most people played. A recovery allows a character to recover 1d6 plus their tier number in pool points. Recoveries of 10 minutes or longer, though, they can also recover a character's wounds. 10 minutes removes all minor wounds, and 1 hour will remove all minor wounds and a single moderate wound. With 10-hour recoveries, things get more interesting. It will automatically remove all moderate wounds, and with a level 6 might check, it will remove 1 major wound. Now, if a player wants to get rid of all their minor wounds during that 10-hour recovery, they can do so, but only if they keep one of their moderate wounds. They're not going to magically bounce back to full health after 1 night's rest. This all makes recoveries a bit more interesting and strategic. I do appreciate it. A character may also remove wounds through rallying, spending might points in order to do so, and inside the narrative, the rallied wound wasn't as bad as it looked, or the character found that extra reserve of strength in order to power through. And in most genres, only minor and moderate wounds may be rallied. They cost 2 and 5 might points respectively. Wounds may also be treated as an intellect task utilizing the healing skill. Treating wounds is a level 0 task for minor wounds, although players should still roll in case they trigger an intrusion, because then things get fun. It takes about a minute or so. Now think of it as wrapping up a strained elbow. Moderate wounds take 10 minutes to treat and are a level 3 task. Major wounds jump up to a level 6 task, and those take an hour to treat. Now, I got a couple of thoughts on treatment as a mechanic. First, the timing for treatment is actually dependent upon a genre. A major wound in dungeon fantasy, for example, takes the hour I mentioned, but in epic fantasy or in hard science fiction, that treatment takes a week. And in space opera games, treating major wounds actually only takes 10 minutes because you got dermal regenerators, right? So that's kind of cool. I do like that. On the other hand, in a session I ran, we had 2 characters take major wounds from a tornado, and 2 characters were trained in healing, which made that level 6 task a little bit easier. 1 character also had bandages that acted as an asset, which made that level 6 task even easier. And then they actually applied effort, so they went from a level 6 to a level 3 task for a major wound after being knocked in the head by debris from a tornado. And that was kind of rough because that major wound lasted all of about 10 seconds in table time. And the thing is, as characters get access to more levels of effort, dropping that level 6 task for a major wound treatment, that's going to become really trivial. To me, that all takes something away from the major of major wound. Now, I've got some thoughts on how to interject some tension back into those treatment interludes, and I'll share that a little bit later. I have run 2 sessions with the new rules, and I do like the changes. I will say, however, that my familiarity with Cypher system is making my transition somewhat surprising. The game looks the same. The game feels like it should play the same. I expected the game to play the same. It does not. 90% of the time, yeah, it's the same game. But that 10% made me realize I had to change my approach to running it, particularly for one-shots like convention games. Because players don't have to worry all that much about their stat pools anymore, characters feel more powerful. And when combined with some of their abilities, they were making checks which were routinely eased by 3 or even 4 steps. Now, no one was trying to sneak anything by me, and I made all the characters, so this wasn't a result of some super optimizer trying to break the game. I am literally incapable of doing that. It's just the way the game has shifted because of the changes. And because of this, and this is what I learned after 2 characters had those major wounds evaporated in just a few minutes of game time, I'm going to have to lean on GM Intrusions much more than I have in the past. And that's to give the player characters a challenge. See, it's no longer about getting them to spin their pools down to where they feel that sense of excited anxiousness. Play now has to encourage players to burn their recoveries and wrestle with whether or not they want to try to get rid of their wounds. It's similar to the way the game was set up before, but it's just different enough that it threw me off. Also, level 1 and 2 creatures, they're even more of a cakewalk in Cypher than they were in Cypher System. So intrusions, they're going to be huge. Now, I'm going to be making pits appear out of nowhere. I'm going to have weapons get stuck in trees. I'm shoving people into rivers. And when players stop in the wilderness for an hour to treat serious wounds, something's going to come down that path to challenge them. Not because I am adversarial, I just want the game to still have that sense of anxious challenge. Now, aside from the overcorrection of last actions, I gotta say, this is a really nice update to one of my favorite games. And yeah, character creation, it's a lot faster. It is a lot easier to follow than it was in the previous edition. I encourage you, go check it out. The book right now is available for pre-order at the MCG website. A hardcover PDF combo, that's going to cost you $55.69. The hardcover alone, well, that's just $49.99. The PDF alone is $18.99, but it is not listed in the store at this time because it's just the pre-order period. It'll appear a little bit later. You can also download a free preview of the Character Rulebook. I'd recommend everybody get that. I mean, it's free. I want to thank all of my channel members and my patrons, so my coffee contributors and my patrons of CAFFEINATION. You do a lot to help support this channel and keep it going. If you would like to join my Patreon in particular, you can do it at this link right here. Patreon's where I'm kind of doing most of my membership stuff, and you can get things like my adventure journals. You can get some sharing of my playtest. You can get all sorts of cool things that will only be over there for Patreon for members. So if you're interested in getting a little bit extra from the channel, that's where I encourage you to go. But my channel members here, love you guys as well. Thank you so much. Oh, also on my Patreon, you will get ad-free videos. On the review front, I have read the Dragonbane Book of Magic. It's really a cool update to a system that I really enjoy running, so expect that review coming up very shortly. I have just finished a book called Out of the Box, which is a history of Swedish role-playing games, speaking of Free League, and I'm going to be sharing a short review of that coming up. You cannot get the physical copy of that book outside of Sweden, but they have a DRM-free PDF that you can purchase, and it is a really fun read. Also, I am about halfway through Shadow West. It's a really cool game. Looking forward to playing that pretty soon. Hopefully, I'm going to get that review up early in August. Want to also share my thoughts on my couple of months now of using my e-ink tablet for my TTRPG notes and adventure development. Really fun, so expect that coming out also sometime in August. And speaking of August, on August 9th, I'll be running a game at 20-Sided Tankard at Broken Goblet Brewery in Bensalem, PA. The link to get a ticket is right over there. There's still cool spots to play at some really neat tables, and I encourage you all, if you're in this area, go out and roll some dice and hang out at a really cool venue. I am looking forward to bringing all of this to you, and until we see each other again, folks, happy playing, everyone.